Welcome to Mission Majjhima. Ajahn.
So Ajahn, tell us about Majjhima Nikaya 43, the Mahāvedalla Sutta.
So in this sutta, which is a Vedalla, or question and answers, or exposition, we find Venerable Mahākoṭṭhita, who is the Buddhist disciple who he declared foremost in Patisambhida, or analytical knowledge, and we see his skill in that as he comes and questions Sāriputta, the Buddhist disciple foremost in wisdom. And they have this exchange back and forth. And just to note, these two friends in Dhamma have a number of suttas, probably a good dozen throughout the different Nikayas, the different canons, the different collections. And they're just conversing with each other. And Mahākoṭṭhita will ask questions, and it's almost this intellectual, just refining of their understanding of things. So that's what we find here, this question and answers, and largely, depending on how you break it up, 7 different sections where Venerable Mahākoṭṭhita asks somewhere between 30 and 40 different questions, depending on how you count. So the first section is about Mahākoṭṭhita asking, how do you define a fool and how do you define a wise person? And Venerable Sāriputta answering that a fool is one who doesn't know the Four Noble Truths, and a wise person is one who does. Then going into talking about 3 of the 5 aggregates. So consciousness, what is consciousness? What is feeling, Vedana? What is perception, Sanya? And are these things conjoined or are they disjoined? And Sāriputta then defines consciousness as that which cognizes pleasant, painful, or neutral, and defines feelings as that which feels, or the feeling of pleasant, painful, or neutral, and defines perception as that which perceives different colors, so blue, red, white, yellow. So then Venerable Mahākoṭṭhita asks about paññā. So what is paññā? What is the rising of wisdom? And what is right view? What gives rise to right view? And how is right view supported? I hope to go into some of those a bit more later. Then questions are asked about bhava, or states of existence. How many different states of existence are there? States of existence in the sensual sphere, the sensual bhava, the form sphere, and the formless sphere. And then questions about rebirth and how there's not the coming into rebirth. And Sāriputta answers with reflections on similar to the Four Noble Truths of existence or rebirth comes into being based on craving. And it doesn't come into being based on not giving rise to craving, the third noble truth. Then there are questions about the first jhana. What is the first jhana? And here Sāriputta defines it as singleness of mind or unification, ekaggata. And what are the 5 factors of jhana? And here, along with one other sutta that we'll find later in the Majjhima, Sāriputta responds with the 5 jhana factors, what are now called the 5 jhana factors of vitakka, vichara, directed thought, evaluation, of singleness of mind, and piti and sukha, or rapture and pleasure. And then what 5 things are abandoned with the jhana? You've got the 5 hindrances, so sensual craving, ill will, restlessness and worry, and sloth and torpor, and doubt. And then there are questions asked by Mahākoṭṭhita about indriya, or the different faculties, faculty of eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body, and faculties of heat, and faculties of vitality, or ayung. And then in the final section, Mahākoṭṭhita asks questions specifically about attainment, samapatis. So quite a few questions about the attainment of the cessation of perception and feeling, and then questions about what are referred to as 5 different types of ceto vimutti, or liberation of mind. So liberation of mind, which is adukkha sukham, or the neutral liberation of mind, the liberation of mind which is animitta, which is signless, the liberation of mind which is akinchana, so the liberation of mind based on nothingness, the liberation of mind which is based on emptiness, or sunyata, and the liberation of mind which is appamana, or boundless. So, Ajahn, lots to draw out there. Which aspects of the sutta would you like to draw out?
Yeah, I think we both went into this video thinking, how are we going to do this? Because this and the following sutta are they're just treasure troves, and they're the 2 Vedalla suttas, the only 2 in the canon, and that comes from the idea of Viddal, like splitting open like a flower, blossoming. And, just as you begin to kind of listen to more and more Dhamma, Q&A sessions become often, I think for many of us, our favorites because they're just so alive and they fill in these gaps. And similarly, these two suttas, Majjhima Nikaya 43 and 44, they're just these amazing discussions which really fill in a lot of kind of things that we all wonder about, actually. And I find myself referring to these suttas very often in conversation with people, which speaks to their power. So, I won't even get into the cessation of perception and feeling. I don't have any experience with that, although it's fascinating to see that really all the questions which seem, you can't really trace where they're going initially, but you see that they're all actually in the end aiming towards speaking to this profound state of liberation or samadhi. This is a state which is very near to awakening and which some places in the commentaries say is only available to non-returners and arhants, enlightened beings. And then also, as you said, the different liberations, just to see how, Venerable Koṭṭhita asks, are these the same or different? All these liberations through the signless, through emptiness. And how the Venerable Sāriputta says they're different in many ways. And then he lays out sort of the root to each, but that they're the same in that greed, hatred, and delusion are a maker of limits, a maker of signs, a maker of something. And they're all these doorways to the deathless, basically. And they all end in the same, or maybe even are the same liberation, or have resonance with each other, but that people enter through different doorways, kind of, which is beautiful to see laid out so clearly. Some of the most salient points here I find to be the ones which are much earlier on the path. So little things which often many people ask about, but that are addressed here, include, for example, the fact that perception, consciousness, and feeling are conjoined, not disjoined. And often people will ask, like, where does this aggregate begin and this one end? And just to be able to say, actually, it's not always that clear of a distinction. These things kind of are mixed a bit. And then the difference between consciousness and wisdom, that consciousness is to be developed, or consciousness is to be fully understood, wisdom is to be developed. But that these are similar. And that distinction is in the first discourse, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, where in the 12 turnings of the Wheel of the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha says, dukkha, there is the truth of dukkha. Dukkha is to be understood, consciousness, vijnana, and, first noble truth is to be understood, but the path towards wisdom is to be developed. And there's a great analogy in the commentaries where they say sanya, perception, is like a child looking at a coin and it sees the kind of color and shape of it, but doesn't understand what it's for. Consciousness discerns is like an adult looking at the coin. It sees that it's currency and how much it's approximately worth. And wisdom is like a money changer that discerns if it's false or counterfeit, that discerns like where the gold was from, all that. And then the final thing just being Venerable Sāriputta's pointing to the fact that the mark of wisdom is letting go. And there's a great passage in the questions to King Milinda where Nagasena, the monk he's speaking to, says, the mark of logic is gathering, the mark of wisdom is cutting off. Just like a reaper gathers barley in the hand, a sheath of barley, and then cuts it. And just looking at what wisdom means by its ability to make us let go. Ajahn, what else would you draw out here?
Just two small points, which are in that aspect of wisdom. And here Mahākoṭṭhita asks about what are the causing for the arising of right view, samadhi, and Sāriputta responds, the voice of another, parato gosa, and yoniso manasikara, wise reflection or appropriate attention. And then the next part is really fascinating. What supports the arising of that right view once it has arisen so that it develops into liberation of mind? And Sāriputta answers with 5 things. And it's a great list because how do we develop our right view, which is the forerunner of the path? around which all of the other factors circle, is with ethics, so sila, with sutta, by hearing teachings, sakkacha, which is discussion, talking to other people about it, samatha, which is tranquility, and vipassana, so deep insight. So right view, we develop it through these different things.
So Ajahn, what is the word of the week?
The word of the week is vijnana. Vijnana. So it means awareness or consciousness in different settings, and it's the fifth of the aggregates, and it's oftentimes literally translated as distinct knowing, vijnana. That's the word of the week.
Well, we'll see you all in about 1 minute for Zoom, and otherwise we'll see you next week for Majjhima Nikaya 44, the Chula Vedalla Sutta. Ajahn.